This is Lit, Leadership, Impact, and Technology. These episodes are with myself, Rob Z. So I have 20 plus years in broadcasting. I'm a content creator. I'm a digital expert. And my partner in crime for branding, for marketing, for consulting online is Kyle Damon. Kyle, what do you do? What are you all about?
Hey everybody, 15-year digital branding expert. I've launched several national brands, and I'm here to help everybody change the way we do business and earn money in this world.
When we talk about LIT, Leadership, Impact, Technology, when you have great leaders using technology properly, they create huge impacts in their business, in their industries, in their lives, and they create a mission behind that. Great leaders use technology to create a massive impact. How can you become the best leader that you can be and use your leadership to harness new technology to make that massive impact in lives, in business? You ready to get into this, man?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
This is Rob Z Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the podcast, LIT, episode number 2. Kyle Damon.
All right.
Rachel Lingenfelder.
Hello.
Hello. Hopefully you tuned in for episode number 1. Oh, I'm Rob Z, by the way. I'll introduce myself. What we were just talking about is going to be, which nobody else could hear except for us, but the point of the matter at hand here is that you're not sometimes going to feel like you want to do the thing that you know needs to be done, right? Or if you're on a certain path, things are going to pop up. You know it's important to get these things done, but your body's not always going to agree with you. So it's like the pushing through aspect of all of that. And I think we probably all come from different places with that. Kyle, you were just saying before we started about how pushing through for you, working like an 18-hour day or something like that, if you break it up into different sections and different tasks, it might be okay. But to push through on a super long day like that, that's not something that you can do? Or is that something you have done on a regular basis?
Yeah, I certainly have done it. Yeah, I don't know if I recommend it. I'm not sure you get further ahead. I guess in some cases there's more complex work that you might want to do in the beginning of the day, and I think the umbrella to this is your mission and your goal, right?
Yeah.
And so what you're really working toward, and anybody on this podcast probably has a dream or something they're trying to bring forward into their life, into their career. And we have to balance that, right, with work and our present obligations, paying the rent when our passion project isn't paying the bills yet. And, there's no point in your entrepreneurship life, whether it's 1 year, 10 years, or you still always have to balance these factors. And while we have future projects we're working on, we also have to, do the mundane stuff, as it were, that pays the bills. So this has been a theme for us and the things we're thinking about as we try to grow and expand and in the new projects. So yeah, to me, the theme for this conversation is more about having, like you said, Rob, what is that process of getting, more productivity out of yourself, if that's even the right way to frame that. We think of like the cattle prod kind of analogy, but the body's intelligent. And, I'm a big believer in you don't need to prod it along, but more of maybe a negotiation process, right? And let's work 2 hours on this, and then I'm going to go out and do something I enjoy, or, take a break or layer it somehow. I call it layering. Yeah.
That's something I've had a lot of issues with that Ray, my mentor, Ray Overdorf, has talked to me about, taking myself off of a task even when I want to get it finished and I know I got to do something to get it finished, taking 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes right in the middle of it just to go take a break. And that's super important. And when I don't do that, yesterday I didn't do that. And by 4 o'clock, I was burnt out and I was like exhausted.
Yeah, you're not respecting your rhythms of your body, right?
Right. So even when you're, and the thing is, like what I was doing was something I'm passionate about and I really wanted to finish and create, but I wasn't putting, especially when you're staring at a computer screen. I think that's a big step. It gets a little rough, yeah. You have to step in and put that pause in. And when you do it, there's a noticeable difference compared to whenever you don't. You might not notice it in that moment, but you'll notice it hours later. And that's what happens to me. Around like 4 or 5 o'clock when I have to go home, now I've spent all my energy for the day in my work day and not spreading it out. So like you were saying, if you have different things that you want to get done, they're not all the same task. You gave the example of like, maybe we're recording this at 10 o'clock at night. In the morning, you had your job, you're working, you're getting clients, you're doing work for them, and then we switch to we drive 40 minutes to do a seminar, and then we drive back, and now we're recording a podcast. Being able to switch gears like that can keep you in a better, longer day rhythm.
Keeps
of working.
You refreshed, yeah.
Yeah. But if you try to pack that all into one thing, you'd be burnt out.
Yeah, if you're just doing coding all day or doing emails all day or some sort of the same thing, that's where, at least for my brain, it becomes more drudgery.
Yeah.
But when you can shift gears into a different thing, it's even though you're still working, it feels like a break or a different task.
Yeah, and Rachel, you still have an odd job. It's like a job you don't necessarily want to have, but you have it because you need to get paid money.
Steady income, yeah.
Yeah, so when you have that job, usually that's the one that comes first, too. That's the one that you have to do every time, every day, and it's the one that's paying you money, but it's the one that you enjoy the least. And that, if you let it, sucks up all your energy to do the other things. And if you throw kids into the mix, or you got to pay bills or whatever else comes into your life, you run out of time by the end of the day, and you need more energy. And I think that's where the American staple of lots of cocaine and things in the 80s like that, with the economy and getting things to where they were, maybe where people working over hours than they should have been, and not listening to their body.
Yeah, I think that's a big topic these days, right? Self-care and a work-life balance, but also working towards the goals we want to achieve. And what does that look like in this day and age where we have a ton of medical data in terms of what constitutes health, in terms of the amount of sleep you need to a degree, and the type of things you should be eating, or not sitting too long is another one as a digital professional. These are things you have to think about because they will affect your long-term health if you're not careful.
Yeah, the sitting one that's a brutal one.
It's tricky. Yeah, stand-up desks are a big help for sure.
But just moving. I mean, the treadmill desk too.
I love it. Yeah,
very
I
important.
I don't have one, but I do like the idea.
I built my own. It didn't last very long,
really?
but I did build one. Yeah, it was kind of a piece of garbage. But it's obvious we're built to walk. If you look at the body structure of a human, they're not supposed to sit. We're not supposed to be sitting around all day long. It just doesn't make any sense. But that is what we end up doing because we work for the machines instead of having the machines work for us.
You got to be careful. Yeah.
That's a very slippery slope. That I don't know how did you feel about this starting your career whenever you just started doing branding and digital marketing? Because for me, the 2.5 year period I'm in right now, it's been very difficult sometimes to step away from the computer. And when I know I need to, I still don't. So I'm still trying to find that balance. Have you found that?
I think you have to be careful of how you build your business. If you're relying on one skill set that requires computer face time a lot and no personal human time and things like that, I think you might set yourself up for, a challenge. And, I could probably spend more time on emails and reaching out and get more clients that way.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that's not a lifestyle I want to set up long term. So that's why we go out and do talks, and that's the way we go out and do things in the community. And that's where that's where I personally get that relief and that sense of life satisfaction, because the whole reason we're doing all this is to build a better life for ourselves. And that's something you just want to think about. A lot of times we find ourselves in these positions where we're saying, we're just going to do this for a little while, or we'll just do it this way for this year and this year. But the problem is we're such creatures of habit that you just have to be highly aware of that sometimes when you do something for 30, 60, 90, 180 days that's not that healthy, then you end up, what you gain a little bit in maybe a little bit of financial gain, you lose in health and long term. And then all of a sudden you're in this deep habit that's hard to change.
Yeah, and you don't even know that you're in it necessarily.
It can be tricky,
right? Yeah, that's the issue, is putting yourself in a habit that's very detrimental to your life and to your health. The whole screen time issue, and I wonder with this that you see somebody who works in front of a computer all day long, and maybe they're coding or designing or whatever that is. And you think, oh, that's what they do for a living. That's their specialty. They like that. I don't think, even if that is your passion, that is your specialty, that is that's the only way for you to create the things that you're creating. That's not good to spend 10, 12 hours a day or whatever that amount of time is without a break.
I wholeheartedly believe, in the next 10 to 20 years, you're going to see work formats change drastically, because the data is just going to compile and you're going to see how unhealthy it is. And in my opinion, you're not a balanced employee, or you're not a well integrated employee or worker if all you're doing is staring at a screen. You should be at team meetings. You should be leading seminars. Everybody in that company has an expertise at something. So you want to, anybody that runs a company or manages a company, you want to give your employees a multifaceted experience, or else they're going to go to companies that do that. Companies that care for their employees are just, more desirable. So we all have to, as businesses, we have to be aware of that. And I think the health data is going to continually reinforce that over the next decade or so.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And Rachel, I want to ask you this question, because there's down a floor below us, there's a Cutco knives company. I don't know if you've seen that. And there's lots of young kids coming out It seems like they have a new employee.
Is that what they do down there? Sales training and stuff?
Yeah, sales training. Yeah, and they sell. I think they.
It always sounds passionate when I walk by. I'm like, oh, they're motivated in there.
They're trying to fire them up about these knives so they can make some money. Yeah, but I wonder, like with that sort of thing, you're bringing somebody in, and I have had those jobs. I worked at a call center when I was like 18 or 19. I didn't care about it at all. And I wonder how a company could ever get somebody to truly be passionate about the thing that, even if they're sitting there giving them these sales presentations and prepping them and getting them pumped up, how do you get passionate about something that's not geared towards what you want to do in life, geared towards your interests, and is something you can actually get behind and get excited about, especially at a young age? Like, Rachel, for you, for example, because I've been through it when I was, and I'm sure you have too, Kyle, having like just jobs that meant nothing, and you just go every day and just kind of trudge through them. Yeah. When I was your age, I was doing it still. So how do you feel in that world of having a job that's not necessarily something you're super excited about? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, can you make that something you are passionate about, or do you feel like you just have to transition out of it?
I mean, with the job that I have now, I've been at it this is my 6th or 7th year doing it, and I think at the beginning I knew that it was something that I wasn't going to keep, and I really wanted it to be that way. But I realized that you suddenly become an asset because people know your name, they know that you're dependable, so they keep calling back on you, and that's what happened. And I mean, I could be the person to say, no, just go and quit. I mean, but I don't want to do that. I want to encourage others to like just wait it out and keep learning, because I mean, it's still a business that's growing, because I mean, everything is changing nowadays. But I don't think you should just quit. Yeah. Like snap, just quit. Right. I don't think that's not profitable for you, because one that cuts off, like especially if it's like that's your steady form of income, you're throwing yourself into a hole. And you're still digging. So it's like you have to be smart about it.
And you're teaching yourself, if you stick through it and actually put the work in, you're teaching yourself that you can get through things that you don't necessarily want to do to get to something you do want to do.
Oh yeah. And I mean, Kyle's been setting up these video morning sessions and trying to get this video library started up. And one of the things that he keeps talking about is how when you're in a job that, I mean, maybe you don't necessarily care so much about it, but like it's still a learning opportunity. So like act like you're getting paid $100,000, $1 million to do it. And that mindset change alone has the capabilities of making everything feel a lot less crappy than what it is. Like, because you find the little things that make it interesting, like make the business interesting. Like, I think it's so cool how the business can like shift if it decides, if they get into new owners, if they get into new forms of management, how those ideas taken from like years of doing it the same way, and then that shift, I think that's so interesting. And the company that I work for right now, like they just had a huge shift after so many years of doing the same thing. And you see the struggles of it, but you also see the places where it's becoming more profitable because it's reaching out to different, like, because it's becoming like ours, for example, mine, the business I work for, they became so much more community based, like that. I've never seen that happen before, especially with them.
So you watch the shift from the old management to the new management.
It's huge.
Oh, interesting.
And I think the one problem is you got people who were in there who were making the big decisions, but they didn't care. It's one of those situations where they were the ones that were just trudging along, and all the employees were just also
status
suffering.
Quo,
yeah. And once you see somebody coming in, and I give props to the new people that are coming in, not only the owners, but the people who are in general management, like they want to ask questions. They want to know what the problems are, what the pros and cons are of what they're already doing, what people want to see, what people think are working and what's not. Like, there's so much more that they care about, and it's really refreshing. So I mean, I up and wanted to quit how many weeks ago because I just got sick of it. But then I had one conversation with somebody who was 10 times as passionate as the other person, who cared so much more about it than he ever thought that he would, because this was never a form of business that he had ever been in.
Yeah, nobody ever treated it like that.
Worked for years in the fast food service, and jumps into this, and he no knowledge whatsoever. I already see change. Like I already see a shift, and I think that that's so cool. And I think like working under such a boring environment for so long, really I had my doubts, but then once I saw it happening, I was like, whoa. I mean, even this company has the potential to be changed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's there for everybody. I guess the move is, and Kyle, it goes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago. If you can get your employees to care, if you can get them to really be invested for some reason in your business,
right,
that's the real key to everything. And as an employee, if you can be invested, that's the real key for you too. Not saying you're going to be there forever, but while you're there, make the most of it.
Yeah.
Even if deep down you know it's not going to be the end result.
Like Rachel was saying, it's what I encourage everybody to do is act. How would you act today if you knew you were getting paid $100,000 a day to do that job? Like you would whistle to work. You would be positive with everybody, and the first thought is, oh, well, that's interesting, and then the next thought is, well, how is that going to square with everybody I'm with at that work? And you start thinking, well, what would Joe think? What would Sally think? If I walk through, they think I was crazy, and then you put yourself right back in the box again. And so, of course, you don't want to go in the next day, with a total character shift. They will think you're crazy, but you want to think about what that means in terms of the energy that you carry throughout your workday, because you'll attract yourself to a new job or a new situation, or just like with you experienced, Rachel, like your work situation changed. Like it actually changed, the ownership changed or the management changed, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a healthier work environment. So carry that positive tone and life will respond to you, I think. And it has for me, at least I can speak firsthand, that when I changed my attitude, that people in my work left, people that were bothering me, they kind of found different places. And it's like, I'm a believer in that. What you put out is what you get back. And, if you put out more positive energy, your life will begin to shift.
And it's amazing showing the effects of having somebody in leadership and that being effective upon their employees. That's also really big too.
It starts at the top.
That's that's a must.
Like that, I think that was the biggest thing for me. I think that's part of the not only just getting a paycheck, but part of the reason I'm holding on is to see who not who survives, but kind of that's what I'm looking at. I want to know who's going to continue and be excited about the new positive mindset that the business has. Because there are just some people who want to show up to gossip, to make things harder, to complain, and just to make everybody miserable. And like you said, carrying that type of energy, you're going to get those people that are going to be invested in that, and they'll want to do it themselves, or then you'll get the ones that leave and want to go on a more positive route.
Yeah, but those bad eggs bring everybody down, right? For real. It's like you get that one person who's complaining a lot, who's not happy, who hasn't gotten the raise, somebody's making more money than them. They spread like a fungus.
And the problem with them is they don't know how to stop.
Yeah, and
most of the time, that's their coping mechanism instead of
and that's usually not their
positives.
That's usually not their work life. That's their life.
It's
everything they do is that complaining.
They have
style.
to find a reason to justify why all this bad stuff is happening.
Well, and you can have
them.
compassion for that, because you recognize when times in your life when you've had a negative state, or times where you've been in a funk, and you didn't have the tools to transcend that, and if you're doing better in your life and you see somebody who isn't, or they're in a negative mindset, you can have compassion that they don't have the tools to be positive, and that helps a lot, because you're no longer in judgment of them or the situation, and that'll free your energy up, because the bottom line is no amount of water in the world can sink a ship unless it gets on the inside. So when you maintain a positive state of mind and optimism, then nothing outside of you can affect you unless you choose to. Now, that isn't something that we all practice very much, so it does take practice, but you can get, we can all get much better at that, and you never master it. It's always a job. It's something you have to work towards.
No amount of water can sink a ship unless it gets on the inside. That's good.
Isn't that a good one? Yeah.
If you don't let that whatever it is, that cancerous thing that person is
Yeah.
bringing into that company seep into you, you're going to be good. I noticed that in radio when I was leaving my job that I worked at for 14 years in the same building. Once I knew that I had an escape plan, I started working so much harder and caring so much more.
Yeah.
And I found that to be strange. And everybody, because there was quite a few negative people in the company. And I started to just distance myself from them, and I would pretty much just lock myself in the studio. I'd be in there my whole shift, and then I would do all my other work in there. Because if you have, like you said, pretend like you're making $100,000 or $1 million.
Whatever it is.
Or pretend, or don't even pretend, just start working on something at home. Start learning about something that really lights you up.
Yeah.
Then when you go to work, it's not going to be as hard because you can be like, oh man, I get to
balance it out.
I get to get out of here. I get to go home and do the thing I love to do, and I get to put more focus into it.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's one of the keys. So as bad as that might sound, you may be a good employee because you have an exit strategy to leave that job. But when you feel like you're pinned and stuck there, that enthusiasm goes out the window because that's just the rest of your life. Right. You're gonna be sitting there.
I know that feeling totally. Like I before I even knew what social media management or like coordination was, like I just walked in knowing that this wasn't going to be permanent for me, but I worked like it was.
That's
because I wanted to show them that, hey, like I know that this, because in the beginning, even like at like orientation, they just kept saying, I know this is just going to be a temporary job. You may be here for a year, 3 years, 10 years, doesn't matter, but there's always a next move. And I mean, that's the kind of mindset that I had to start off like I got hired full time at this company right out of college. Like I didn't even graduate and I got hired. I was working. I'd go to classes from like 8 a.m. to 3:30, and then I'd have like work from 4 to 6:30 every night. Like I just kept going, and I knew that I was going to burn out at some point, and I didn't burn out until I had that sitting in front of a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day. And I mean, the problem was that I wasn't around people who were as passionate, I feel, like, who didn't love, like, I love it now. Like, I'm out of that environment, that negative environment where, like, we never had meetings, like, maybe once a month. And the only time that I would get to see management is if something went wrong.
Yeah,
like
it was
that,
always
like,
a negative.
And I hated, like, I felt like that little cubicle that I was in, I was just stuck. And I didn't like that. So I think once I knew that, okay, like I have a way out, and I went into substitute teaching. And I knew that, like, once I started getting the ball rolling on all those things, that was my way out. But I worked hard. I did. I wanted to show them that, hey, I still care, but see ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the skills you get, it doesn't, even though this might not be your end job or whatever, your final job, and for most people it never is anyhow, you learn, like, what you practice today is what you're going to carry with you. Like, don't wait until you get an ideal job to start working like it's your ideal job.
Yeah.
Or else you'll never get there.
Right. And when you do, here's a great example, man. What you're saying right now is what I was just thinking. And I don't know if you went through this after you stopped working meaningless 9-to-5 jobs and started on your own passion, but for me, the past 2.5 years, I still catch myself working as if I have a boss and I can just go home at the end of the day and forget all the stuff and leave it at work and come back to it later. So I still fall back into that mindset sometimes where I'm like, oh crap, like I'm treating this thing like it's the thing that I used to do that I was all disgruntled by. Not that my job was terrible or anything. I didn't have the passion for it like I have the passion for what I'm doing now. And I guess it'll take a few years to kick it out of my system completely.
Yeah, it takes a little while, yeah.
So you went through that? Well,
the hardest part about being your own boss is you got to be your own boss.
Yeah.
And, it's we grow up, 80 to 90% of us grow up to be an employee mindset. And that's a very different way of thinking than as you shift into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
However, like we were talking about at the conference, I think we're going to have a big shift over the next 10 years or so of more and more people moving to being solopreneur, independent contractors. They're going to take their skills that they have at their job or in their industry, and they're going to turn it into an expertise and have a high-paid skill. And that's what I'm very committed to. And that's why, Rachel, we were doing those video training programs, because not everybody, but there's a large amount of people who want to, just like you did, Rob, make that transition. And the biggest thing, as we come to find, is mindset. And you've got to have the right framework of mind. You got to have good people around you who can help you, because you just can't do it all yourself. And if you're isolated in a box, you won't have the mindset that you'll need to stick with it.
Yeah, the whole idea of protecting your confidence, which I mentioned tonight at the seminar that we were talking to in State College, Pennsylvania. Dean Graziosi has this thing. It's protect your confidence, and it's extremely important to hang on to that, because so much of your day is other people trying to distract you from what you want, because they want to give you what they have and get you on board, whether that is they're trying to sell you something, whether that is their bad attitude, whether it is their enthusiasm for something that does not relate to you, but they want to, bring it on to you. There's so many things that can distract you. So if you can
drain your energy, deflate your confidence,
suck your time, it's all this pulling away. So it's like this constant fight against the tide, fight against the current. And I think what you have to do really is learn to love that and see that as a challenge. The way I'm looking at it right now is like, if I can see that as a challenge that I can defeat on a daily basis, I'm going to get really, really good at what I do. Yeah. Because I'm pushing all that stuff out of the way and keeping. That's why I have written up on the whiteboard. It says me, and then a direct arrow to dreams, and then all of the things that I feel like are enticing, like marketing, like people, friends, consulting, freelancing. I put email on there, things like that, like little things that are good, that work for me, but they're. If I focus too much on them, they will get me off course. And somebody talked about when you're chasing after, if you figure out what it is that you want and you're chasing after it on a constant basis, when they send a rocket to the moon, or they send a space shuttle to the moon, basically it is millions and millions of small recalculations every tenth of a second. Okay. So every tenth of a second you must... Because if you would have to recorrect to the left just a little bit, and you stayed on that left path, you'd miss the moon by a million or 100 miles or whatever. Right. Wow. So you have to constantly recorrect the whole way there, and that's when you work at a job and you have when you have a 9 to 5 or whatever that situation is. You don't have to worry about recorrecting because you're just working for somebody else. Yeah. Somebody else is responsible for that path. Right. But when it's you must constantly recorrect yourself to keep yourself on course, and that is, I think, a really great lesson in discipline to be able to figure that out.
Yeah. It's not, and it's not that it's. I don't know if you would explain it similarly, the same way or not, but when you make that shift to being your own boss, there's different challenges, but it's not any harder because you're not getting this constant whiplash from a poorly structured management team, a company that doesn't care. And there's this constant emotional whiplash that a lot of people have in working for companies because, your values aren't aligned with theirs, and you don't respect or trust the leaders at the top, and oftentimes for good reason. And
when they don't care, and like you said, like Rachel, that's when it's really hard to care. Yeah, it makes it super difficult.
Well, just like with marketing, and if we go into organizations and trying to help them with their digital strategy and in the marketing. If I get a sense that it's not coming from, if there's not a true initiative from the top down, it won't work. Like it'll be fighting the whole time, and it won't take off. Yeah. So it's got everything in a company, and if you're working for a company where you feel like you're not being respected or represented and cared for, or at least appreciated, you definitely want to start making moves away from that. And I think a sideline income is a great way to build a cushion against that, because you just got to be careful. You can't resent your boss. You can't resent your company, because that only hurts you. That's the water getting on the inside of your boat. It just won't help you or them or any situation. So you got to be careful not to be resentful, because that only hurts you. And then you've got to start taking action to move out of it. Because if you resent and stay in the same situation, that's I don't know what you call that, but it's not a good move.
Yeah. I think the tough love part of that is because I can imagine somebody listening to this and being like, well, yeah, but you don't understand my situation. They they cut my pay in half. Yeah. There's a million different things they could throw in there. But when it comes down to it, you have the power to do something about that. Yeah.
And only you. And nobody's going to come save you.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that it's easy, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm not saying that you're wrong for having internal struggles over that, because you're right. I mean, it's tough, but in the end, nobody's going to save your ass. Nobody's going to come through in that job and be like, you know what, you're amazing. Yeah. You get this raise, unless you do something to earn that, right? Or transition yourself out of it. But you only you hold the power to change that.
I've been doing this a long time. I was fortunate to find a passion when I was quite young in motorsports, and that led me down a very interesting career track where I've once you become committed to your passions in a certain way, like there's no going back, and you'll reach a threshold where you're just no longer able to operate in that old way. And it's a very much a journey worth taking. And it doesn't matter how difficult or the challenges you have, because you know what else is pretty hard? Working for a company, 9 to 5 for the rest of your year, or rest of your life, where you have no possible upside.
Mm-hmm.
You might just make enough money to retire. You might. And in most cases, you're not going to be able to. And so what if it takes you 10 years to learn entrepreneurship? So
Right.
what if it takes you 10 years and 3 failed businesses to get it figured out? Like, what's the alternative?
Right. The alternative is a life of misery,
I know,
and then
yeah.
not a whole lot of money at the end of that life, right? And I shouldn't say misery. I don't want to paint a picture like it's so dark, but we all have something inside of us. If you can tap into that thing and find that special thing that you really want to do, then you're going to transcend that job, because you're going to fall so in love and get so on fire for that thing you want
That's
to
right.
you want to do.
That's what will sustain you.
Yeah, that job will eventually it can't hurt you anymore.
Yes, you'll be immune to that.
Yes, you'll get so powerful in that thing that you're building that job is just it's just a gateway. It's a lesson learned. It's like I got to get through this thing because you've more on the horizon.
Terrible jobs are fantastic motivating tools.
Yes,
Oh,
just
yeah.
don't. Jumping out earlier better is better.
Don't
right?
stand too long.
The longer you're in, yeah. So let's sign off here in a second. But I'm thinking about that. This is a crazy thought. So when I was working at the radio company I used to work for, we had when we would end date a commercial, like we'd have a commercial, we'd put it in the system, there'd be an end date for it. The number could only go up until 2038 in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And once we hit 2038, I don't know what was going to happen. It was like
Y2K.
It was like Y2K, right? Yeah. So I used to think like, dude, if I'm here by the time it's 2038, we have to reset these freaking systems. I'm thinking to myself in the future how much I'm going to hate my life, right? And how terrible that's going to be. Like if that day comes and I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, now we got to redo the systems. I've failed at life. So
Right.
that always kept me on a reminder of, I loved everybody that I shouldn't say everybody, but I really had a good connection with some people that I worked with. But I thought they've been doing the same thing, complaining about the same
The
thing.
complaining is,
And especially in a radio job where it can be, if you want to have fun at that job, it's not that hard. You got some freedom to go on the air and have some fun with it. But they would just make it this miserable experience. And while I was working there, several people died in the company.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was just
Stress.
weird. Yeah. And this radio is a very unhealthy profession, for whatever reason. But that always stuck with me. Like, having that in my face, that 2038, like that, I can still remember that being like, man, if I'm here when that happens, that is it. So, what can we leave with some closing thoughts, guys? What do we want to leave them with? Something.
Could I ask a question?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I like questions.
So, since we're on the idea of like having a bad job, what was the worst job that you've ever had? Both of you. Me too, but
I worked at a Subway. I cut the front of my thumb off once.
oh jeez.
That was bad. I hated that.
Did it
Subway
make its
job.
way into a sandwich?
It was on the bread. Yeah, so
Oh, man.
I was cutting the loaf of bread, and my friend came in. And I was talking to him, and he told me the bread he wanted. So I was looking at him and talking while I was cutting. And I just sliced my thumb open, and blood squirted all over the bread. And like, I had to go to the emergency room and get stitches.
Oh my god.
That might not have been the worst job, but that was the worst exit I ever had, because that was pretty much the end of it. Probably Weiss Markets when I was 16, fronting shelves. I'd have to front shelves for 8 hours, like just bring produce or bring boxes and stuff to the
I've done
front
that,
of the
yeah.
shelf
Yes.
for an 8-hour shift when you're 16.
That's a drudgery.
That's hell, yeah.
Yeah. All you want to do is be out with your friends,
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
just something else.
Some variety.
sleeping.
If podcasting would have been around back then, I think it would have been good. Pop an earbud in. I think
Yeah.
that for a lot of jobs now, podcasting would save me in a lot of menial jobs now. You can just put an earbud in and just the day goes by.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah.
Like if you're working construction or something, or holding a road sign.
Yeah.
Jeez.
What about you, Kyle? What's the worst one?
Say, I think of the worst one for me was I was washing trucks like they were out on the road, right? So then you had to spray wash them, and this was rain, shine, winter, summer. Fortunately, I only did I think I might have been there 3 or 4 weeks, and And I had a bit of an attitude in my teenage years, so I gave the ringleader there, I gave him some sass one day, and I showed up the next day. He says, "Hey, you're off the schedule," and my 16-year-old brain didn't know what that meant. So I'm standing there. He's like, "You're off the schedule." I'm like, "What does that mean?" I guess he didn't want to tell me I was fired. I don't know. He didn't tell me I was fired, but yeah, washing trucks,
chase, man.
like you're just soaked all day. Your boots that you bought to stay dry aren't dry,
Right?
And that was rough. And you're around people that aren't that happy. And yeah, thankfully it didn't last long. But I've been quite lucky with that, and definitely with finding my passion early. But what about you, Rachel?
Well, the very first job I ever had, I worked at Taco Bell, and I remember going into the interview and being so pumped, and then like my first shift, I just was harassed by like every single employee in there.
Yeah.
Like they didn't like me because I was the new girl with energy and I wanted to learn.
They drag you down to their level, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
You can't come in there with that energy. Make them look bad.
No, they're like, we make tacos grudgingly. Like we're not supposed to be happy. Like they got mad. Like I was working as a cashier. That's what I was hired for, and I trained and I did really well. And then they put me back online because they were busy. And I did the order wrong in a taco, and I got scolded. It was bad.
Damn.
No, but I think the worst job I ever had, I worked seasonal at American Eagle. Just
Folding them shirts.
well, no, like I was on floor, but dressing room. Oh, yes, those jeans look great on you.
Oh, you had
like
to be the fashion
pretending
advisor?
that I had to care like what the people looked like in the clothes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had to wear the clothes too, so I couldn't be like that judgmental. But it just trying to be nice to everybody, even when they were complaining. I was just like, I can't. I need to get out of here.
Retail's a special beast.
Oh, I don't know how people do
tough.
it. And like,
And that's the thing when you're talking about firing up your employees, like how do you keep people like that fired up? Like those jobs aren't meant to fire you up.
There's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. In a new company with a good team at the top, they can translate passion all the way down through the company, and we see that. Like, look at Chick-fil-A. That place is pretty, spins up pretty high.
Yeah, they have smiles on their faces. I wonder if it's legit or not sometimes.
It's definitely more happy than McDonald's.
Oh, no doubt, yeah.
It's it's a whole different paradigm.
Wendy's, I always notice, has a lot of happiness.
Decent,
I don't know what that's about.
I don't know, but Blair, like that Wendy's in Altoona, like on Pleasant Valley, there's this one girl that always takes my order. Hi, welcome to Wendy's. What can I make fresh for you today? Like really high pitch.
That was
and
really good the way you guys
love
did that.
her energy.
Cheeseburger, please.
Yeah.
Maybe you're meant to work a drive-through. That was excellent.
Can you add a fresh baked cookie to my order? Like she was always so sweet, and every time I had her, like she would like the one time she took my order, and she was also like there when I gave her my money, and I was like, I love the fact that you're probably the most high energy employee at a fast food restaurant I've ever met. She goes, thank you.
Well, hopefully she's going to transcend that job at some point.
She might be listening to this podcast.
Oh, please. Hook me up with some free Frosties.
Yeah. We got to wrap up here, but I think an important piece of the puzzle, right, is whenever you have that person who has that attitude, like if you don't have that attitude and you're really having a hard time attaching yourself to somebody who has a positive attitude, even when they have no reason to, cling on to those people.
Yeah.
We need to learn something. That's my wife is that example to a T. She has this natural, unreasonable reason to just be happy and content.
Optimistic. That's great.
Yeah, just contentness, optimism. You got to put yourself around those people and attach yourself to them. It's like if you're an introvert, you need to be with an extrovert at some point because you got to, even if you're not meant to be in front of people all the time talking, you've got to learn some of those skills. They're only going to help.
Oh, yeah.
Cool,
Your
guys.
community is so powerful. I mean, that's just number one, who you hang out with.
It's super, super important. And if you struggle with that, find that person and just try to become their friend. Try to learn something from them.
You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your friend's nose.
Well, if they're a good enough friend, I feel like you probably could.
That closeness, though.
That's a good way to end, isn't it?
Yeah.
There you go.
That
That should just be my thing, like a strange quote, like right at the end.
You can't pick your friends, but you can pick
You
your
can
friends.
pick your friends,
You can't pick
but you
them.
can't pick your friend's nose.
Yeah, not totally accurate, but I do like it. Yeah, 'cause I would pick somebody's nose pretty easily. It's not that big of a deal.
That'd just be like the last thing on the podcast.
Yeah, all right. So,
Let's pick
guys,
somebody's.
thank you once again. Episode number 2, lit, live here. Kyle, Rachel, myself, Rob. You can find us. Just follow, as of right now, social media, plain and simple, on Facebook. Join that group. You can follow me at Rob Z Radio on Facebook, robzradio.com. Kyle, what about you?
Kyle D Marketing Instagram.
Kyle D Marketing on Instagram, and Rachel.
Rachel Lingenfelder In-Home Dog Sitting Services on Facebook and Instagram.
That's a lot. Rachel Lingenfelder
In-Home Dog Sitting Services.
All right, cool. All right, thanks, guys.
All right. Till next time.
Bye-bye.
This is Rob Z Radio.